Hi, I'm astrologer and life coach Penny Dix. Welcome to my YouTube channel and welcome to a special video that I'm doing today, which has been requested by many of you out there, that I actually have a look at Her Majesty the late Queen Elizabeth II's natal chart, and I'm going to look at the significant transits which I feel have been around that have led to the events of the last few days. And I'm also going to look at Charles, our new King Charles III. I'm going to look at his natal chart and again at the significant transits that I feel have brought him into this extraordinary and life-changing time of his life. So I'm going to start by looking at the late Queen Elizabeth's chart. And she was a Sun Taurus. She was 12 minutes into Taurus. She was at the 0 degree of Taurus. This gave her this ability to be able to, in a sense, respect and inhabit the whole of the kind of Taurian qualities of luxury, but in a very grounded way. And if you think of the way she was at her happiest out in the countryside, which is a very Taurian kind of quality, she was happiest when she was riding her horses or being with her dogs, her corgis. I would imagine she had a liking for good food and good company, which is very much a Taurian quality. And she had her moon in Leo. And of course, Leo is a very regal sign. So this gave her the ability to take on the mantle that was put upon her at a very young age. Her ascendant, interestingly, is Capricorn. And I think this was literally and metaphorically her backbone. You know, Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. And Saturn is very much about the skeletal structure of the body and backbone. And in a sense, she became the symbol of the backbone of the structure of the country and of the Commonwealth countries and the other territories that she reigned over as Queen Elizabeth II. Now, when she passed, Pluto, transiting Pluto, has been going back and forwards over her ascendant. Pluto is about death, birth, transformation. In Capricorn, it's about the breaking down of structures of the old order. It can be the breaking down of tradition and governments. And whilst we've had Pluto transiting Capricorn, which has been going on now for nearly 20 years, and in fact next year it will actually start to dip its toes into the sign of Aquarius, which is going to bring very new energy. But I think it's interesting that it's whilst Capricorn is in its final degrees, whilst Pluto is in its final degrees of Capricorn, that Her Majesty passed. Because this is a transition and a transformation. And the kind of era that most of us have lived through, you know, not many of us are alive today. There will be some people, but they were probably quite small children, were alive today when her father was on the throne. And so most of us throughout the planet have only ever known a Queen of England And in a sense, she's almost like the great or the grand matriarch, the grandmother or even the great grandmother of the planet. So Pluto, I feel, is the significant planet that signified there was a chance for her transition. Pluto is squaring her sun. That's a hard angle, it's challenging. A Pluto square is always going to bring big change, dramatic change. Pluto was also squaring her natal Chiron, and we know that her health has been not so good over the last few months or perhaps even few years. And it's interesting that a lot of her problems from what we've learnt from the news were to do mostly with her mobility. And of course, Saturn, ruling Capricorn, thus ruling her ascendant, is about the skeleton and the structure, bones and difficulties with such. Now Saturn, her natal Saturn, was conjunct her natal moon. So, Saturn transiting Saturn, that's what I wanted to say, was, in opposition to her natal moon. I'm getting in a muddle here, but I know what I'm talking about. Yeah, here we go. Yes, Saturn was conjunct her Mars and opposite her natal moon. So this again, being conjunct Mars, her natal Mars, Saturn on Mars, Mars can indicate illness or health problems or surgery. It's cutting. So there may have been talk about whether she should perhaps have been moved to hospital. Maybe there could have been some kind of surgical intervention. Who knows? We don't know. The other planet that was very significant in her chart when she passed was transiting Uranus. Transiting Uranus was squaring her moon. That's hard, that's tough. That's kind of shocks the unexpected. So it puts you on guard, on edge. It was also squaring her natal Mars. That again, if you think what I was just saying about Saturn being conjunct her natal Mars, is a hard, difficult, challenging aspect for her health. Uranus, transiting Uranus, is also squaring her Jupiter. Jupiter, interestingly, can, because of its expansive nature, and because it is a co-ruler of Pisces, it can indicate that point where the energy transforms from the physical into the spiritual. It was a square, it was a shock. And the other thing with Uranus, apart from it being opposite her natal Saturn, which is a challenging angle in itself, she was really being pushed to the limits of needing to slow down. Uranus was also squaring her natal Neptune. Neptune, that rules Pisces, can also be one of those planets that can indicate that kind of transition from the physical into the spiritual. So the full moon, I think, in Pisces, which we have today, the day I'm actually recording this, is kind of indicative of significant change and endings. The full moon is in Pisces. It was actually, or is actually, conjunct her natal Venus. So it was going to affect her in some way. I think what it's done is, in a sense, made all of us, most of us, I cannot speak for everyone, but I know the majority of people really value, with hindsight, the dedication that she gave and the service. She served the nation, the country, the people. She served the Commonwealth, she served the territories, she served the world in the symbol that she represented, and what she sacrificed. She sacrificed her privacy. She sacrificed many things that perhaps she personally would have liked to have had in her life. So it's interesting that the sun is in Virgo with this full moon, because Virgo is about service. It's about service to others. And the moon is full in Pisces, shining, being shone on by the sun in Virgo. I'm just going to look at the chart that I took a noonday chart for Thursday the 8th, based on Greenwich Mean Time, to look at what else might have been significant for that day, for the passing of Her Majesty. And basically, most of the major aspects are the same as the ones that we have today. The difference is the moon, transiting moon, was conjunct transiting Saturn. Saturn-moon conjunctions are usually significant, and it was conjunct her natal Mars. This, in turn, was opposite her natal Neptune, and loosely opposite her natal moon. We can never know, as astrologers, exactly what is going to be played out in a chart that indicates that transition of the spirit from the physical into the spiritual realm. But there are indicators in the chart, especially as Saturn, transiting Saturn, is also conjunct her Jupiter, that we can, with hindsight, say, yes, there are symbols, because remember, astrology is a language of symbols. And we can say, yes, there are symbols that could represent that. But in general, I think that she was an amazing, amazing monarch that none of us are really going to ever forget. And it's interesting that two of the greatest, or well, three of the greatest rulers, monarchs of the United Kingdom. First of all, we had Elizabeth I, who was the daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. And secondly, we had Queen Victoria, who was a great queen. And now we have had Queen Elizabeth II. So we've had a very interesting, it's just interesting that it has been the feminine that have had these kind of glorious reigns. But now let's look to His Majesty. Charles, the King Charles III, I keep wanting to call him Prince of Wales, and of course he isn't anymore. William is Prince of Wales, and Kate, William's wife, has become Princess of Wales, which I think is lovely. So let's look at the chart for Charles, because what I'm looking at first is the fact that the lunar eclipse we had back in, it was the lunar eclipse in Taurus on the 16th of May this year, was conjunct his natal sun in Scorpio. So the sun was in Taurus and the full moon was in Scorpio. And I can remember looking at this chart, and I haven't even had a chance to go back and listen to what I said for that particular full moon, but I might go and check out that video and see what I said. But I know that I thought there would be significant changes as he was then the Prince of Wales. And my feeling was, because the Queen is a Sun Taurus, and there were significant points in her chart that were also affected by the lunar eclipse in Taurus, that it could indicate her transition. So that is where, or when, I began to think that we would have, if you like, a changing of the guard this year within the royal family. And what's interesting is that even though, and I'm sure I'm not alone amongst my colleagues, other fellow astrologers, in sensing that this was probably what was going to unfold this year, I don't think it's helpful to make those kind of predictions. It's the same if I'm doing for a reading for you. I'm not going to, whatever I sense in that department, because you can never be 100% sure. And actually, it's really important that we allow life and transitions to unfold in the way that they're meant to. And, you know, it could really damage people's lives if they had this future information of the passing of someone. I just don't think it's helpful. So, looking at Charles, Prince of Wales, I'm now going to look at the Mars-Uranus North Node conjunction, which happened on the 1st of August this year, because this was also significant for King Charles. Now, as I said, King Charles is a Sun Scorpio, and the planet Uranus, transiting Uranus, which is our planet of the unexpected, of shocks, of all sorts of unexpected events, is currently opposite his natal sun. And on the 1st of August, we also had transiting Mars in Taurus, and the transiting North Node in Taurus. All three, Uranus, Mars, and the North Node, were all conjunct in Taurus. And this was a rare conjunction. This is something that doesn't happen very often, at least not in the sign of Taurus. These three do meet up, but for them to all meet up together in Taurus is rare. They're all opposite Charles's natal sun in Scorpio. Not only that, his North Node is also in Taurus, which means his South Node is in Scorpio. His moon, his natal moon, is at virtually the same degree, bar a few minutes, as the Queen's sun. This is extraordinary. They were so closely allied and aligned. So the signs of Taurus and Scorpio are incredibly significant this year and towards the end of last year and just moving into the next early months of 2023. And so again, it was clear that this was going to affect, for me it was clear, this was going to affect the succession that takes place in the royal family. So that particular significant conjunction, which can indicate enormous change, the most kind of extraordinary change, the change that can only happen sometimes, well, in a sense, once in a lifetime. I believe, if I remember from my research when I did the video on this conjunction, the last time they were aligned at this degree in Taurus was when Carthage fell. And that's interesting because that was the decline of the Roman Empire. Now, we also have to look at Pluto, because Pluto is hugely significant in all these changes that we're experiencing now. And I think that when Pluto goes direct, which is in October, I think it's the beginning of October, around about the 8th, Pluto then will not go retrograde again until it has dipped its toes into Aquarius. So when Pluto goes direct in October, and I think by October the 8th, we will have a much clearer idea of how Great Britain, the United Kingdom, is going to be structured under the new king, King Charles III. I think this is going to have huge reverberating effects on the current government of the United Kingdom. They have had to lay aside their warring differences at this point. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of long-term effects this change does bring. I'm just going to move on to look at what is the proclamation today of His Majesty King Charles III being proclaimed officially king, which I watched on the news, and it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Really is interesting. If you get a chance to go back and have a look at it, just maybe the highlights will be on YouTube. It's really interesting. It's the first time they have ever televised the Privy Council in the passage of the Act of Succession. I just think the history involved, I do love history, I have to admit. It's one of my favourite topics, and it just gives me goosebumps. But anyway, let's look at King Charles with the transits for today, because I think this sets the tone for what he can expect with his reign. So I haven't actually had a chance to look at this chart at all, so I'm going to completely just dive into this. So first of all, we have, of course, the full moon in Pisces today. And interestingly, the full moon for him falls in the 9th house. Now, that's a sector that denotes overseas contacts and overseas countries, anything that is to do with far distant places. It's also to do with law, truth, and higher learning. And also transiting Jupiter and Neptune are also in this part of the chart. And I just think that for the king, this means, I would think to start with, he's probably going to start going on a lot of world tours. I think he will travel to Australia. I think he will go to Canada. I suspect he will also go to America. And he will, and for some reason, Bermuda has just popped into my mind, as also has Gibraltar. He may even choose to come to Malta, where I live and I am based, and that would be wonderful, because of course the late Queen lived here for 2 years before she became Queen with her husband Philip, of course, who was in the Navy. So, but let's look at his succession or accession chart. Well, Uranus, transiting Uranus, the part of fortune, which is an Arabic part which brings huge luck, and the North Node are all conjunct in his 10th house of his kind of career, his standing in the world, his public profile. This is amazing. This is all going to be very fortunate for him. I think that, because, and it's interesting because the North Node is conjunct his natal North Node. He's having a nodal return. This is so super exciting. This is the king fulfilling his destiny. And I just think it's super exciting. It's wonderful to be able to witness this kind of history unfolding. And I think he's going to have to guard his health. I think he is going to have to make sure that he paces himself and factors in times of slow down and me time, if he's possibly able to do that. Because Chiron in Aries is conjunct his midheaven. And the positive side of that, on the one side, the personal side, is he needs to watch his health. The positive side is that I think he will manage to heal a lot of rifts that perhaps occurred, over kind of 20 years ago, when his first wife, Princess Diana, Princess of Wales, sadly died in that terrible accident. And I think he is going to really work hard to heal rifts that may be in closer circles and also in the wider public around that whole subject. Now for him, I think that he's still going to have to take it easy, as I said, with his routine, with his day-to-day routine. And if he can get some kind of balance and have some authority over how he paces himself with that, that will really serve him well. The sun, of course, today is in Virgo, and we know we have a full moon. The moon actually had already turned full when he was proclaimed king. And the sun in Virgo gives us this sense of attention to detail. And of course, Mercury has gone retrograde today. Now, how does this affect the fact that he has basically ascended to the throne today? Well, I think what it's doing, because it's in Libra and it's in his third house, it's giving him cause for reflection. I think he will need time to take time out. He is going to be inundated with well wishes, with messages of condolence to him and his family, and messages obviously also of congratulations on his accession to the throne. So I don't think life is going to settle into any kind of normality for him before, I think he will get into more of a routine by the end of October, when a lot of the major outer planets start turning direct. And I think he'll find then life is really going to speed up for him. So this has been a long video, and I hope I have done justice to both of them with what I've touched on. I'm only touching the tips of the iceberg for both of them. But I'd just like to say before I end that I really send my utmost condolences to the royal family for the loss of Elizabeth II. And I also send my congratulations, if that's the right terminology, to His Majesty King Charles III, and I wish him well on this new path for him and to all his family. So on that note, I'd like to say thank you so much for joining me for this extra video. And please please comment. I'd be very interested to hear your comments. And I'd love it if you could subscribe as well, especially if you're new here. And I'm newly at this momentous point of 1K milestone and counting, and it would be nice if you could help me get to 2K and onwards and upwards. So thank you so much for joining me, and you will see me again very soon. Lots of love. Bye for now.